I'm working on this LG multi-V unit, 4-old gal bluer charge. And by the way, let me just mention this. You know, when you're doing a job, you know, as a young guy, I was always just trying to rush in and do it. As I've gotten older, I try to do stuff from the get-go that makes my life easier. So, you know, I've got these unplugged so I can open these doors wide. I'm gonna get this and prop it out of the way. So I'm not gonna, you know, be, oh, that's hard to do one-handed. I'm not gonna just be fighting stuff all day. It's just a little tip there, but yeah, she blew her charge. You can see all that oil. Found it right here. There's a crack. By the way, if you ever take insulation off of cap tubes, you need to put it back. A lot of times that just cuts down on the vibration and will prevent these cracks. So the repair here is nothing spectacular, but I am going to show a few tips and tricks for dealing with something like this, especially in this particular situation. The first thing I'm going to do is get it clean. It needs to be nice and clean. We especially don't want this crap on there. I've scraped that nasty stuff off with the knife, and you know, sandcloth is tougher and can cut through more like nasty corrosion, but in general a Scotch-Brite pad is a much better cleaner. It's also easier to use. It's more like a sanding sponge, whereas sanding cloth is more like sandpaper. It's easier to hold on to. It works its way into contours like that, you know. So I do prefer this. They wear out faster, but they are much better at cleaning. So let me get this thing clean and then we'll take a look at it. Oh yeah, look at the shine on that baby. And you can see it's cleaning up even into there. So I highly recommend using Scotch-Brite. Now, because this is a crack, I don't just want to lay braze over it. You know, if I had to do that, I would be, you know, fairly confident that it would hold. I would just have to really build it up. But this is also really close. I don't want to cut this out. What I'm gonna do is so if it was down here, I would cut it and then just pinch a piece of copper around it. In this case, I'm gonna make like a little sleeve to go around here, and I'm gonna flow braze all around down the crack, and we're just gonna get like a sleeve which will also reinforce it. So let me do that and then we'll take a look at it. Here's my piece, and I just cut that in half with tin snips. Now, as far as crimping this around the pipe up there, you can use these, but I got in trouble once because one of the jaws kind of cut into the copper too deep and created a bit of a leak. I really prefer these Knipex plier wrenches for this, and they're also really great at creating a very tight seam. It's not much to look at. I ended up using a 1/2-inch piece. I just needed a little more slack. Crushed it together and then cut it with a pair of bulldog snips, so I got a really tight seam tight around there. Now I've put flux underneath it, and that's not necessary on copper with any braze that has phosphorus, but in this case I want to make sure I have really good flow, so no problem using a lot of flux, especially because we still have contact between these 2 points, so there's no risk of flux getting in the system. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of this. So the disadvantage is that I got more surface area for leaks. It's a little harder to braze, and you know, all of that. The advantage is that I don't need to flow nitrogen. I don't have to open the system. I don't have to worry about like braze working its way down inside this cap tube. I don't have to worry about flux or anything really. You know, it does look janky. I got to make sure that I do a great job brazing it, but other than that, it should be a dependable repair. If you're not using a rosebud, you really need to use a rosebud. These things are perfect. I use them for everything. Doesn't matter whether it's a cap tube, it doesn't matter. You just get good at controlling your heat. You get in and get out quick. Also, you never ever want to be short on heat when you're trying to braze. That's the main thing that'll cause leaks. So I just filled this in. I basically filled this entire sleeve with braze until it's running out the bottom, capped both sides, went down. I mean, the entire thing is now a solid piece of metal. Again, not much to look at, but it is going to hold. All right, let's pressure test it. Okay, so by the way, I've got a screwdriver tip in the solenoid. You don't want to leave these energized with nothing ferrous in there, because it will burn these coils up. They get so hot, they'll burn your hand if you touch them. Found that out the hard way. Okay, so our leak is right up in here, and initially I only found this leak because I was just using system pressure, just what was left in there, and found this leak. And then maybe in the course of working, see that? Watch this. I hope you can hear that. Did you hear it change? So one thing to always do if you're having a hard time finding a leak is to start shifting stuff around. But in this case, me working here caused that, probably which was a small leak, to become a lot bigger. What a lucky day for me. I think I've got an organ donor in the basement, so I might steal that. I don't know. Might replace this whole thing. Yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out later. Oh boy, figures. Let's just do a little recap here. I couldn't film much because of the rain, but I ended up taking that whole assembly off an organ donor, putting it in, held pressure overnight, got everything re-insulated to prevent vibrations. Got a cap. This is used, but it was off. Never ever leave these caps off. The cap is the primary seal, not the Schrader core. The Schrader core is there to help you get on your gauges and stuff like that. It is not there for a seal. Always tighten these as well. Sometimes on the suction line, if this isn't tight, condensation will build up in there, and then in the winter time it can freeze and bust that cap. Always check your gaskets. These 5/16 core removers have these gaskets have a tendency to fall out. See, that one's working its way out. Just make sure they're all there. Now, as far as adapters to go from this quarter flare to like your bigger hoses, you can buy them like this. I've also made them like this. Just go to Harbor Freight and get an O-ring kit and find one that fits tight, and you can make your adapters. I get asked sometimes about this blue strap and what it's for, and I'll show you in just a second. Now, in this case, I am working in a tight area, but hanging the pump is not necessary in this case, but I just went ahead and did it. It's going to give me a little more room. But there are cases where it is super helpful to hang this pump. It can put you in range of your hoses and kind of get this exactly where you need it to be. Let me point this out and talk about it. This is a little thing I made here for this Yellow Jacket micron gauge. Braze that adapter together. This is just a Yellow Jacket ball valve, nothing special about it. But one thing that Appion claims is that their valves are micron rated. These are great, they really are, but I'm not sure that it matters that much, because I leave this shut off for sometimes weeks at a time. Every time I've put my micron gauge on it, it's reading 2000, and that's pretty normal for such a small area. That doesn't mean it has a leak. It just means more than likely means it has no leak, because you have a large amount of surface area, very small amount of volume, so you're gonna be picking up stuff really easily. I've just got my heat sinks clean, because whenever you got oil, you know, going all over the inside of a VRF unit, you got to think about your heat sinks. You want to make sure those are clean. All right, that's about it.